Brexit supporters love to talk about democracy and popular will. The truth is that they don't believe in either of those. Since Britain's exit from the European Union, no party in the House of Commons has advocated for the country to rejoin the EU. Despite the fact that an increasing number of people have been wandering for quite some time. The majority voted to leave and the advisory referendum eventually prevailed, despite the opposition of all parliamentary British political parties at the time. So let us hope that the majority of the electorate, who want to return to Europe, will eventually prevail over all of the major parties this time. Let's take a look at how Brexit might look in 2023. As the new year begins, we can already see where Brexit is heading. 2023 may not provide a definitive answer as to how and when this particular Brexit will die, but it is becoming increasingly clear that it will. The referendum on leaving the EU was promised in the Conservative Manifesto in 2015, and the Conservatives won that election. It is widely assumed that Conservative Prime Minister David Cameron simply added this irresponsible promise for the sake of Tory party management. In the belief that the 2015 election would result in another coalition with the Liberal Democrats, and that Cameron would be able to tell his party's Brexiteers that it was the coalition partners who were blocking any referendum. But, in reality, the Tory civil war was sparked by the threat posed by UKIP to the Tory party. In any case, history will judge Cameron for prioritizing the needs of his party over the economic and social well-being of the United Kingdom. He shouldn't have kept his promise so quickly because he was arrogant and thoughtless. He could have set a higher threshold than 50%, or even a supermajority of 2/3, by scheduling the advisory referendum so early in his parliamentary term. He could have allowed 16 and 17-year-olds to vote on their future at half the cost of a constitutional amendment. He could have ordered that all 4 nations of the United Kingdom vote in favor of leaving, or he could have ordered 2 referendums, one on Brexit in principle and the other on the final negotiated Brexit deal. This latter option appears to have been a particularly democratic solution, resolving the utter mess and divisions of Brexit implementation, where 2/3 of lead voters now say this isn't the Brexit they voted for. The problem is that it is the Brexit that the Dust Remainers voted against, so don't try to tell me that those of us on the Remain side of the debate were being undemocratic. With a narrow vote in favor of leaving, it seems more democratic that because Cameron failed to put in place the safeguards that should have been in place about the nature of the majority, the form of Brexit should have been as soft as possible to reflect the 52-48 vote. Instead, we got tyranny of the majority rather than democracy, with no clear mandate to leave. The goal should have been to negotiate a new relationship with the EU that would keep us outside but as close to it as possible. According to polls, the main reasons Brexiteers opposed EU membership were the political structure and the freedom of movement of people. It is safe to say that the vast majority of Leave voters would have been perfectly content for the UK economy to remain closely integrated with the EU's and to have continued to participate in things like the European Medicines Agency, the Erasmus scheme for university exchange students, and the Horizon scheme for unified scientific research arrangements. For Europe-wide transmission of British TV shows and the touring deal for performance artists and so on. It's not widely known that this is exactly what Theresa negotiated as her Brexit deal. She just had to pretend for the sake of her party that her Brexit was more difficult than it was. She negotiated an incredible deal, and it's still unbelievable that the EU agreed to it. The fact is that the European Union was willing to do exactly that, so that Britain could have reaped the majority of the benefits of EU membership without actually becoming a member or accepting free movement of people between the EU and the UK. The so-called temporary membership in the EU Customs Union, under Theresa May's deal, meant that UK goods would have had to meet EU standards and that it would have been unable to pursue an independent trade policy, but most Leave voters were unaware of this. Respected economists such as Paul Tucker, a former deputy governor of the Bank of England, have stated that the EU single market can still function well and provide significant benefits in the absence of free labor movement. In terms of labor, the party should have voted for May's deal in retrospect. It would not only have ensured a soft Brexit, but it would have completely destroyed the Conservative Party, with Theresa May leading a coalition government supported by Labour votes. For as long as she could stick it. But with Eurosceptic Jeremy Corbyn at the helm, it was never going to happen. Although many supported the Corbyn manifesto, he was the wrong guy leading the opposition at the wrong time. A scenario that resulted in Boris Johnson's leadership blunders. We've had Liz Truss and now Rishi Sunak, but we're stuck where we are. So let us look forward. The question now is what will happen to our relationship with the European Union in 2023. The UK has been out of the EU single market since the end of the transition period 2 years ago. The pandemic lockdown obscured the disaster of leaving for a while, but the economic damage is now becoming clearer by the week, with report after report revealing the long-term damage inflicted by this unnecessary hard Brexit. Except for the United Kingdom, every other major economy except for Russia has recovered to pre-pandemic levels or higher. In comparison to a doppelganger UK economy that remained in the European Union, the Centre for European Reform now reports a 5.5 hit to the British economy and a 13.7 hit to long-term investment, both of which are entirely due to the Brexit deal we ended up with. It's no surprise that public opinion has shifted so dramatically. According to polling, an average of 60% believe the decision to leave the European Union was wrong in retrospect, while only 40% believe it was correct. You may argue that this is not the same as 60 wanting to rejoin, and you are correct. What's more, when asked whether we should rejoin, polls now show that 56%, excluding those who don't know, are in favor of rejoining. Now that a sizable majority has consistently expressed a desire to rejoin, none of the major political parties' policies have yet to reflect this. According to their website, the Lib Dems' current policy is to campaign for a better relationship with our European neighbors. So far, the most promising ray of hope has come from an anonymous source close to Jeremy Hunt, the current Chancellor, who recently spoke to the Sunday Times about a Swiss-style deal. This source appeared to be so close to the Chancellor that he sounded exactly like Jeremy Hunt, who had just 2 days before stated publicly that he was confident the vast majority of trade barriers between the UK and the EU would be removed. Of course, there is the European Research Group. The mad Brexiteers on the far right of the Tory party are not known for their calmness and rationality. They quickly threatened Sunak with a swift and powerful kick in the balls, if he did not immediately reject such tempered and reasonable dialogue in relation to any watering down of the current hard Brexit arrangements. The economic, diplomatic, and social pressures in 2023 will inevitably push the country closer to the European Union. Sunak and Jeremy Hunt are showing signs of progress toward a mature dialogue with the EU. The Swiss model's kite-flying talk drew a strong rebuke from the party's right wing, but we know Hunter as a pro-EU voice, and his pragmatic approach to the Northern Ireland situation suggests compromise and a possible end to the Johnson plan's confrontational approach. In 2023, we will see the Tory government favoring alignment with the EU rather than divergence, and in 2024 or early 2025, we will almost certainly have a Labour government formed almost entirely of ministers who favour alignment with the EU rather than divergence. They'll most likely advocate for a policy similar to Theresa May's Brexit deal as a first step on the road back to Europe. Especially if polls and marginals continue to back that policy. The only issue is that getting to the point where we have a UK government that wants to return to EU membership is only half the battle. It takes two to tango, and our dance partners' toes were stepped on far too many times during the UK's capricious demanding and exceptionalist membership. There is no way that terms as favourable to the UK outside the EU as Theresa May are still available. Let alone within the EU, as we had previously, will ever be available again. But we need a government that acknowledges Brexit's disaster so that a coherent policy can be implemented to minimize Brexit's damage to our economy, culture, and standard of living. Because of growing public pressure, a coerced government may take the first hesitant steps in that direction as early as 2023. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.